virtual moderator, Mr. Imani Kumar, the Deputy Secretary General of ICLEI, who is with us virtually, and he will now in a moment kick off the session. So please make sure you have your headphones on at all times so that you can follow also the interventions from the speakers online. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leon. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the participants joining this particular session, the Global South Commitment to Climate Action, as part of the LGMA events on the sidelines of the COP26. Thank you for joining from all over the globe. I will say that we have participants from Latin America, from Africa, from Europe, from Asia. And I'm happy to moderate from New Delhi in India. Unfortunately, I could not join the COP26 personally, but I'm happy that I'm chairing this session virtually from here. I just want to thank all our speakers, distinguished speakers, joining from, again, various parts of the world. And I also want to specially thank our two sponsors for this particular session. One on the project of CDKN, the Climate Development Knowledge Network, which is supported by IDRC, International Development Research Center, and also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Netherlands government. And also another project called Capacities, which is supported by the Swiss Agency for Development Cooperation, SDC. Which is taking place in, especially in India and also other countries in South Asia. So these are the two projects which we will share the information on what is happening on climate commitment, or a global South commitment towards the climate action. I'm also want to take you through few housekeeping rules before we get on to the session. There is a Q&A box which if you have any questions, if you want to ask any of our speakers, please type those questions. You can use that. And most of you, I think, except me, maybe rest of the speakers have been muted. You must have seen that. When your chance comes, we will unmute you and we will ask you to present your representation. You can also, just also for your information, this whole session is going to be recorded, and I hope it is okay with all of you. And I request everyone to be attentive and see what is happening here, because as I said that, and this is a virtual as well as in-person event, our colleagues joining from Glasgow on that. With these housekeeping rules, I just want to get on to the session. This session will go for 90 minutes, the next 90 minutes. The session is as a Global South commitment for climate action. We have distinguished speakers from government, from donor agencies, from non-governmental organizations. We have two speakers, as I said, from IDRC and SDC, presenting on the supporting the climate knowledge generation and implementation of climate action in the Global South. I'm also happy that we have two government representatives with us. Senior Indian Administrative Officer, Ms. Supriya Sahu, is the Principal Secretary from the Climate Change Government of Tamilnadu. And we also have Mr. Lochan Chehra, is the Secretary Housing from Gujarat government in India. We also have three speakers from South-South-North, from CDKN and South Pole, discussing on the knowledge brokering techniques, climate finance, and gender and social inclusion on that. We will take up few questions depending on the time availability, and we will close the session with closing remarks on that. As I said, that we encourage all the participants to type your questions through the session and Q&A. You can see the Q&A, and also Sleedy.do, and moderators can take over the questions, and we can ask the speakers to respond to that. Before I get on to that, Saira, you have raised your hand. Is there anything you want to say? Okay. I just want to introduce our first speaker. See him. Mr. Bruce Curry Alder, who has joined us virtually from Canada. Mr. Bruce leads on the climate resilience at Canada's International Development Research Center, investing in evidence that contributes to adaptation across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. His expertise spans environmental science and international development and research policy. He was previously IDRC's director for the Middle East and North Africa between 2013 and 17, and also the chief of staff between 2008 to 2013. He will be speaking on the importance of climate knowledge brokering in supporting climate resilience. Mr. Bruce, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and a warm welcome from Canada's International Development Research Centre, or IDRC. Let me begin by acknowledging that the lands on which I live and work in Ottawa are the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. In Canada, reconciliation with our First Nations remains an unfinished journey, and in undertaking climate action, the rights of Indigenous people must be respected, not only here, but everywhere. As part of Canada's foreign affairs and development efforts, IDRC champions and funds research innovation within and alongside developing regions to drive global change. To underscore the importance of knowledge brokering in supporting climate resilience, I would like to look back at the past decade and then look forward to the decisive decade ahead. For IDRC, to this moment, with you today, we have flowed through 2 generations of climate partnerships. Starting in 2006, Climate Change Adaptation in Africa championed participatory action, very much building the field of adaptation research by working directly with communities and learning by doing. Then from 2014, the Collaborative Adaptation Research Initiative in Africa and Asia, or CARIA, sought to achieve scale by rallying more than 40 organizations across 17 countries to build resilience in climate-sensitive hotspots. That effort advanced knowledge through scientific articles and contributions to IPCC reports. It also sought to proactively understand and link with policy and practice, knowing who are the actors, the decisions they are facing, and what they need to know. Together with our partners and friends, we learned that this requires various skills, not just the ability to do research, but also data visualization, community engagement, facilitation, even video editing, to inform investment and action through knowledge that doesn't stay captured in the products of academia, but actually engages and flows through society and reaches those able to make use of them. We convened a research into use working group that helped distill key insights across projects to understand what we were learning at a different scale, and refined approaches subsequently shared through a free online course. And since 2018, we learned alongside CDCAN, the Climate and Development Knowledge Network, as it renewed itself, drew from a diverse set of knowledge bases programs, and catalyzed peer learning across countries. CDCAN's innovative approach, which you'll hear more of later, to brokering embodies commitment to local ownership, Southern leadership, and informing action. And that, I propose, is the secret ingredient. For IDRC, success is not simply the number of publications written or citations garnered, but how does knowledge get used by people to realize climate action? We celebrate when fresh insights are recognized in an academic journal or an IPCC report, yet ultimate success lies in rallying research that helps our societies progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals and those of the Paris Agreement. So where do we go from here? What is the path on our next decade as an international funder of knowledge? I'm pleased to share that we've now embarked on the 3rd age of climate partnerships. There at COP26, Canada and the United Kingdom have announced the Climate Adaptation Resilience, or CLARE program, as a joint investment equivalent to over $100 million over the next 5 years. Where CARIA convened collaboration across projects, CLARE seeks to scale this function across previously distinct programs, bridging the communities of science and risk, humanitarian assistance, and development practitioners to place climate resilience at the heart of how our societies plan for and invest in the present and the future we want. Where CARIA fostered collaboration across disciplines, Claire aims to mobilize knowledge across the spectrum from science to impact. We know that adaptation innovations are most effective when they are locally conceived, locally tested, and locally owned. Claire will deliver strengthened agency in the Global South to do and use research for adaptation action to support the most vulnerable. In a breath, Claire builds on our experience and learning while striving for more ambition and greater scale. Yet the needs of this decisive decade still exceed what we can do alone. For this reason, we need to work together with others. IDRC proudly joined the Adaptation Research Alliance, ARA, of over 90 organizations across 30 economies, bringing together governments, businesses, research institutes, and local communities to increase the resilience at the forefront of climate change. In bringing together such diverse organizations, the Alliance promises to catalyze increased investment and opportunity for action research to develop and inform effective adaptation solutions. Through this alliance, IDRC seeks to connect the grounded realities of locally led adaptation to global dialogue, such as the forthcoming COP27 and Adaptation Futures 2023, and facilitate learning with other flagship programs in this space. Indeed, the Alliance's purpose and principles speak directly to IDRC's mandate and experience. And we need to do all of this in a carbon-constrained and pandemic-affected world. As we race to resilience and to zero, this heightens the critical role of knowledge brokering with strong ongoing relationships at the level close to climate action, tapping into strategic partnerships and capacity at the heart of research uptake. Again, let me be clear. Knowledge brokering is an essential ingredient as our society strives to realize a more climate resilient future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce, for sharing what IDRC is doing for the last decade and what is your vision. And I'm happy, and I've gone through the statement at COP26, your support to the adaptation action plans and also on the knowledge brokering. Thanks a lot for all the support for the last few years, where I was interacted on the CDKN front at the Asia level and also through our partners, South, North, and FLA in both Africa and Latin America. Thanks for all your support, and maybe with more commitment from your side, we will take further the knowledge available to all the partners, all the people whoever need that information, and we will take it forward so that action happens on ground and they benefit out of the knowledge available all over the world. Thank you. Thanks for your participation in this session, and also to IDRC. Our next speaker is Mr. Matthias Bachmann. Matthias works as a program manager at the Global Program for Climate Change and Environment, a Swiss Agency for Development Cooperation, and Federal Department of Foreign Affairs. He was previously posted in Peru, Afghanistan, and Venezuela, as well as in the Swiss mission to the United Nations in New York and OECD in Paris. He actually started his career in 2001 with an internship at a local human rights NGO in Ahmedabad in Gujarat. And Mr. Matthias is joining us in person in Glasgow now. Thank you for accepting our invitation, Mr. Matthias, and joining the session. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Thank you, Mr. Takarai, Mr. Curry-Alder, respected partners and participants and panelists. It's a great pleasure to be here today representing the Swiss government at this event. I will focus my remarks on our cooperation with India and particularly on the project you've mentioned at the outset called Capacities. The recent commitments by India and other emerging economy powerhouses make a difference to the global temperature estimate. If these current commitments are fulfilled, we will remain below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, which is not the 1.5 degree, of course, as intended by the Paris Agreement, but it's a step in the right directions. And today we have approximately 90% of world GDP, which is under net zero commitments. Again, not all of them until 2050, but it's for sure better than a year ago where we only had 30%. So this actually shows that that we will not manage to sufficiently limit global warming without the active involvement of the global South. It is here and now that we have to make the right decisions to set us on the course for net zero and avoid growth paths that rely on fossil fuels. Growth paths that have brought us indeed to the situation, to the climate crisis we are living today. At the same time, developing countries, including India, are of course the most vulnerable countries to climate change impacts. And it goes without saying that adaptation must be advanced as a matter of urgent priority. The Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, SDC, the directorate I'm working for, has been working with, has had a partnership with India for the last 60 years. And for the last 10 years, the last decade, this partnership has focused on climate change. In the area of mitigation, we work jointly with India to promote low carbon cement, energy efficiency and the use of renewable energies in buildings and in agriculture. In adaptation, we help implement climate adaptation plans for cities, and we work with the Indian Himalayan states to monitor, understand, prevent and manage disaster risks like the flood and debris flows that created havoc and sadly took many lives in the Chamoli district of Uttarakhand last spring. India, with its over 4,000 cities and towns, has an ever increasing share of the population that lives in urban spaces. Given the steadily rising impacts of climate change, providing quality services in such cities increasingly becomes an uphill battle. At the same time, as we know, and has been noted in your note as well, preparing for this conference, cities are responsible for 80% of energy consumption and roughly the same amount of CO2 emissions. This is why the project capacities supports authorities and people in 8 cities and the states of Gujarat and Tamilnadu for fighting climate change. Concretely, the project seeks to firstly integrate climate change challenges into city and state urban planning, and secondly, to enhance capacities and knowledge of local governments to access finance and scale up urban climate action through pilots and bankable projects. Through climate action plans, they involved 8 cities, advanced concrete measures in the area of energy, mobility, water, waste, and biodiversity. The municipality of Rajkot is a good example. It allocated approximately US $60 million to install 4 solar photovoltaic plants, procure 150 electric buses, improve the non-motorized urban infrastructure, and upgrade and manage urban forests. In fact, Rajkot holds the honor of becoming the first Indian city to receive a compliance badge from the Global Covenant of Majors for Climate and Energy, for accomplishing all the requirements under the pillars of mitigation and adaptation. I would like to thank and to express special appreciation for Secretary Mr. Lohan Sehra for his continued support in Gujarat. We are also particularly honored that the state of Tamilnadu has asked the project capacities to support the development of their climate action plan and thank the Principal Secretary, Ms. Sahu, for this mark of confidence. The project is already supporting 3 cities of Tamil Nadu to develop and implement climate action plans. Capacities is implemented in partnership with the National Institute of Urban Affairs in collaboration with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, and with a consortium consisting of ICLEI, South Asia, South Pole, and eConcept. I would like to thank and congratulate to all of them for their hard work and effective results, as well as the states of Gujarat and Tamilnadu and the involved city authorities. I hope that the Climate Resilient Cities Action Plans methodology and its basket of solutions can be disseminated to more cities and states across India and the world. I am convinced that it would help ensure that the co-benefits of climate change mitigation adaptation, of cleaner air and of healthier environments can be harnessed, and that the higher level of well-being can be reached for all people living in cities in a sustainable manner. In concluding, let me wish you a successful event, a successful conference with many interesting encounters. And I would like to apologize in advance that I have to leave this meeting a little bit earlier than intended for commitments in negotiation process that I have to attend. But thanks again to all the attendees and participants.
Thank you, Mr. Matthias, for joining us in person in Glasgow for this Global South event. Thanks a lot for taking your time out from the negotiations. I know that you are there as part of the negotiations from the Switzerland government. And I just want to thank SDC and the Switzerland government for supporting the Indian state governments, as well as the 8 cities where the climate action plan is showcasing that how the cities can address the climate change issues. I also want to thank you for your support to the national government of India for coming out with the climate smart city assessment frameworks, which helped in all the smart cities in Tamil Nadu as well as in Gujarat provinces in Indian country. So I just want to thank you again, and I know that your commitment, so we can excuse you. Whatever time if you have, you can spare here. Otherwise, all the best for your negotiations, and we hope we will get a good outcome out of the COP26 negotiations there, sir. Once again, thank you for joining us this session here. Our next speaker is Ms. Supriya Sahu. She is the Principal Secretary with the Ministry of Department of Environment, Climate Change and Forests, Government of Tamil Nadu. And she is a bureaucrat, Indian Administrative Services 1991 batch. And she has been a key figure in several of states' pioneering initiatives towards the climate change. Recently, under her leadership, the state government, Tamil Nadu state government came out with a climate change policy, state level climate change policy, and a vision document. And I also want to say here, she is right now taking care of flood situation, which her state is an unprecedented flood situation, maybe linking to the climate change, I don't know. But thank you, ma'am, for taking the time out during this situation also and joining this session. Please share your views, the vision of the Tamil Nadu state governments towards climate change, and also the activities what you have planned for the Tamil Nadu state. Ma'am, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you, Mr. Kumar, for giving me this opportunity, and everybody at ICLEI, the organization, for inviting Tamil Nadu to be a part of this dialogue. I would also like to give my wishes to all the panelists. And since the time is very limited, I would like to start by saying that we in Tamil Nadu, we have made some very, very important and serious commitments to the cause of climate change. And we are very committed to make sure that the state is in league with everybody, in partnership with everybody, in ensuring that no step is left behind to kind of handle this challenge which is before us. And to start with the entire discussion, I would like to mention that so far, Tamil Nadu, the department which was handling, the forest and the environment, the word climate change was not there at all in our department. But as soon as our Honorable Chief Minister, Mr. Stalin, took over, he gave so much of the importance to the entire initiative that the entire department itself has been renamed as the Department of Environment, Climate Change and Forests. And it signals and also signifies the intent of the government of Tamil Nadu to, take earnest steps in this direction. I also would like to inform the August gathering here that as a state which is one of the best in India in terms of the human resource capital, whether it is in respect of the overall sex ratio for women or literacy or economy, we stand one of the best in the country as the second largest economy in India, with a female literacy rate which is something like 73.4%, and the sex ratio which is one of the best in India. I think we also have the required human capital, which is very much essential to take the initiatives forward. I'm very happy to share with the participants over here that we have announced and we have launched 3 important missions in the state of Tamil Nadu, because we feel that the time has come where these initiatives have to be done in a mission mode. There is no other alternative which is available to us. The first mission we have launched is called as the Tamil Nadu Climate Change Mission, of course. And under this mission, our plan is to involve the local community in a very big way. The second mission is the Green Tamil Nadu mission, where we have planned to enhance our tree and forest cover from 23.8% to 33% in the next 10 years. The third mission is called as the Tamil Nadu Wetlands mission, where our objective is to identify, restore 100 most important wetlands in the state of Tamil Nadu, which play a very important role in the ecosystem, restore them and bring as many ecosystems as possible, and definitely to start with about 20 wetlands under the category of Ramsar International Convention. So these are some important objectives we have before us. I also would like to mention over here that we have already started our work on climate budgeting. We have identified 7 important sectors in the state of Tamil Nadu, which we feel are more vulnerable and should be taken up on a priority in phase 1. And some of these important sectors, of course, are belonging to agriculture, horticulture, and especially because it is relating to the farmers and livelihoods. We also have identified areas like municipal administration, urban infrastructure, coastal districts, which are absolutely important. In fact, it is pertinent to mention here that Tamil Nadu is one state in India which has a coastline which is extending beyond 1,000 kilometers. Contributing to about 15% of the coastline of India is falling in Tamil Nadu, which makes it highly vulnerable. Out of 38 districts, 14 districts are coastal districts in Tamil Nadu, and we are seeing that over the past few years, the intensity of cyclones and heavy flooding is really something which is very, very worrying. And therefore, it is time for us to kind of really work on the coastal zone initiatives to make sure that these districts, they have the required wherewithal to handle these issues. I think it is a few more things I would like to, it is important to mention the steps that we have taken in the past 6 months or so, which are, we feel that there are 3 important areas that we should focus upon. One, of course, is the policy, which everybody else is talking about. So in terms of policy, I mentioned about the missions. So government has taken a policy decision that these initiatives would be done in a mission mode. So this is the first part of our entire strategy. The second part, activities. What are those under these policies? What are those activities that you will be doing? So I'm very happy to announce today, and I have shared the details with you also, Mr. Kumar. We have announced, the government of Tamil Nadu has announced the setting up of the India's first ever green climate company, Tamilnadu Green Climate Company, which will be a professional corporate body to handle all the climate related initiatives in the state of Tamil Nadu, creating this kind of a corporate body. I think climate budgeting, climate finance is one of the most important and critical segments in all our climate initiatives. We need money. If we do not have funds to be able to proceed forward, there is no point in designing, very big plans for that, because we should be in a position to implement. And I think with increasing resource constraints, most governments are facing this huge problem of how do you mobilize climate financing, and how do you make sure whatever you implement within those tight time schedules, and you do it professionally. So that is why this company has been set up by the government of Tamil Nadu, which will run the entire climate change initiative like a professional corporate body. It will be a not-for-profit company, but it will give us the permission, it will give us the identity where we could garner funds from various resources, so that we are able to implement various projects that we have kind of envisaged. The company will also set up a funding, which is a very, very important and critical funding arm. And we are calling it as a Tamil Nadu Green Climate Funding. We feel that in Tamil Nadu, there are several entities which are, kind of looking forward to partner with the government of Tamil Nadu, but everybody wants it to be done in a very, very professional manner. And that's why, to cut the red tape, to cut the delays, and to do it in a time-bound fashion, we have announced this company. I think my time is running out, but I would also like to mention only 2-3 other important initiatives. Our emphasis, the third arm, I did not speak about the third arm. The first is what we are doing in terms of policy. Second, what we are doing in terms of the action in the ground. And third, how are we working with the stakeholders? So I think our entire, premise of the climate change is actually based on people's participation. And that's going to be the key, inspiration for us. We would like the entire climate change initiative in the government of Tamil Nadu's vision to be a people's movement towards climate change. These seminars are fine. The webinars are fine. When you sign all these kind of documents, everything is fine. But where are the people in this entire thing? How do you envisage that a bus conductor or a poor woman or a daily wage worker, how do they perceive their role in the entire climate change? That's going to be the major focus of the government of Tamil Nadu as far as our initiatives are concerned. So we are very much focused on people's movement to kind of towards the climate change, so that we can actually achieve at the community level what we have set out to achieve. To conclude, I would like to say that we have, and towards this, the first step we have taken is we are going to take green fellows, young people, in order to involve them in the entire initiative. Government of Tamil Nadu has announced Green Fellowship Program. So to start with, 40 young chaps are going to be selected by us and sent to each of the 38 districts, 2 for the Chennai, to make sure that they are the people at the ground level to work with the local community leaders, and we will give them the fellowship. So every year or every 2 years, you are creating a kind of a think tank of green thinking individuals who will then go to various departments and kind of bring this kind of an important change. Apart from that, we are in the process of setting up and declaring more areas as forest areas to create fresh carbon sinks. I think it's time for me to stop over here because I should not exceed my time, but I would like to thank each and every one of you for giving me this wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, and congratulations on your green company. I think that's one of the few states in India, and maybe first state in India to come out with a state level climate funding company. And the vision what you have and your chief minister has, I'm happy that the things are running out now there, and I hope, as you said, action will happen on ground and work towards the climate change. Maybe the commitment, like what Indian government has committed recently, and from your province also, you are contributing towards the climate change. Not only just Indian commitment also, but for the global commitment, I think. And also the fellowship program, I think the think tanks and other activities, what you have mentioned, are very much needed at this time. And I hope and I wish all the best, and maybe other states will take forward these initiatives. And not only in India, maybe other countries in Africa and Latin America will see them as one of the few initiatives. And we are happy through the knowledge brokering, what IDRC is supporting, that climate development knowledge brokering. Maybe we will take up a few of these activities as part of knowledge creation, and we will share it with other countries and other city governments and other provincial governments. Thank you again for taking your time and joining us in this event. Our next speaker is Ms. Charlotte Scott. She's the project manager from the South-North, from the South Africa. We are moving from India to Africa now. Charlotte provides technical and project management support to the Climate and Development Knowledge Network CDKN program, supported, as I said, that by IDRC and Netherlands government. She leads the country engagement activities under the CDKN for Africa, working with key actors from Ethiopia, Kenya, Ghana, and Namibia. Today, Charlotte will be presenting experiences of climate knowledge brokering from the Global South. Charlotte, thank you for joining us this session, and the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Amani, and it's lovely to be here virtually. And certainly an honor to be speaking after so many distinguished speakers ahead of me, and quite inspiring to hear the new developments and announcements that have been made so far. So wonderful. I'm going to keep my presentation quite short. So I know both Bruce and Amani have introduced CDKN a little bit already, which is great. I am going to be touching on a few examples. Maybe we can move to the next slide, please. Great, thank you. So CDKN is a knowledge accelerator. We focus on 3 different pillars of our work, which are all looking at combining knowledge, research, and a sprinkling of technical assistance to support locally owned and managed policy and implementation processes. We do this through 3 pillars of knowledge, engagement, and peer learning. CDKN is a Southern-led program and an alliance of knowledge brokers. We have on-the-ground presence in 9 focus countries, and our approach really has been working with either knowledge basis projects or country engagement leads, but in most cases, that person or individual has been embedded and working in their space and building their networks for 5 to 10 years, sometimes longer. And very often we're working in partnership, and we're working as a network. Next slide, please. So our network is all over the world. I'm based in South North, which is based in South Africa and Cape Town. ICLEI South Asia, FLA and ODI are also part of our network, leading different parts of CDKN. And as Imani said, my role really is in coordinating some of our Africa projects. And so naturally, I'm going to draw on a few examples of knowledge brokering approaches that we've had the pleasure of working with projects on, and some lessons from there that I think will be particularly relevant to multi-level action for our presentation today. Great. Okay, next slide, please. So the first place I'd like to take you to is a project of ours in the Volta Delta in Ghana. So this project was led by the University of Ghana and by ProLink Ghana, who are an NGO, and ultimately it was aimed to build the adaptive capacity of a number of women's groups in the region who were experiencing climate impacts from flooding and salination of fresh water. And it engaged with a variety of different key actors in that space, including traditional leaders, land secretariat, women's groups, the district assembly officials, which included the gender desk, planning and agricultural offices, and also a number of microfinance providers in the area. You'll see that they developed a great film sort of capturing some of the insights from the project and a training handbook. Next slide. So one of the key approaches that I'd like to highlight from this project that I think was so critical to its success at the local district level was what I'm going to call understanding the governance landscape and the knowledge landscape. And this project really invested its time in doing a baseline study, which included focus group discussions and one-on-one interviews with every single stakeholder group. And very often this was iterative. They met several times over many months. They engaged with local experts on customary laws to understand the dual legal system around the inheritance of land and the impact on that, on women's capacity to adapt. And ultimately, I think that this project really used that process to identify who does what, who are the roles of the different actors. And as a consequence of that, had a much greater understanding of who knows what, who has what resources, and who can support in certain areas that were identified. And the consequence of this was that the project had always planned to partner very closely with district officials, but then found that certain departments within the district level offices actually had huge resources that were going to be really useful for the women's groups that they were working with. And so district officials went from being a key partner that was always going to receive a little bit of capacity strengthening, hopefully from the project, to actually delivering a lot of the training themselves, providing some of the resources. And the kind of magic linking pin that knowledge brokering could provide in that context was to bring those actors together in a platform that could allow them to share that information. And while there, identify additional barriers that the women's groups needed to be certified in order to access bank accounts, and the district officials were uniquely positioned to help them with that process. And that's now, they've done that, the certificates have been shared, and they're in discussions on accessing short-term credit through local providers. Okay, so next, on the next slide, I'm going to take you back to Namibia, where we have another CDKN project that's led by the University of Namibia and the Desert Research Foundation. Actually, both this project and the one before are building on 5 to 7 years of research and engagement under the CARIA program that Bruce also mentioned in his presentation. And this particular project really built on the ASAR project. And after doing several years of research and engagement, the project implemented a range of multiple approaches to fostering knowledge into action, but all aimed at climate mainstreaming at multiple levels. So from the national to the regional to the local to the community level, trying to integrate considerations to support Namibia to move to stay under 1.5. Next slide. So from this project, I'd like to highlight their knowledge brokering approach of strengthening vertical and horizontal knowledge brokering. I think the project, from its research and engagement, really identified this as a sticking point that although climate change issues are cross-sectoral, fragmentation means that there are really high transaction costs that hinder working across scales and sectors. And one of the biggest lessons for them was the importance of using existing structures and sometimes embedding oneself in existing policies like national climate change and action plans. And in particular, they use existing grant systems where they could integrate a climate lens to then have the same granting process go to community projects that would improve resilience as well. And they identified an existing platform that had previously been used for something quite different but related, disaster risk reduction, and decided that in consultation with partnership with the government ministries they were working with, that the best way to improve multi-level cooperative governance would be to repurpose an existing platform, expand it, and use it to amplify local to national collaboration. Great, next slide. Okay, and so for my last highlighted example, I'm going to take us back to Ghana, in which, also led by the University of Ghana, we have a project that was focusing on ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction, specifically trying to foster collaboration between 5 local districts in the greater Accra region. And Accra suffers from regular flooding, but through some research that the University of Ghana was doing with its PhD students, they built relationships with the local district officials and realized that for many of the 5, they were actually so interconnected that flooding was having knock-on effects in different districts that required them to have a coordinated approach and to incorporate the local knowledge from those districts into the risk profiling efforts that were being undertaken. Next slide. And so this approach I'm going to call enabling mutual capacity strengthening. Across CDK and actually peer learning has been an incredibly valuable approach and tool to support mutual capacity strengthening, particularly at the local level. There's been great demand and I think it's been incredibly useful. And this is a great example where bringing those 5 different districts together was definitely a great platform for them to share challenges and to improve coordination, to maybe air some difficulties that they'd had with one another, but also to recognize that they had some challenges in common. And so one of the great things that came out of this was that a number of district officials realized that they were all struggling with a particular component of policy implementation, and that the ideal body to help them build that capacity was the National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, who have offices at the district level, but for whatever reason, communication wasn't working particularly well until they had all gotten together to discuss possible solutions. And so next slide. As a final takeaway, after zooming across 3 different examples of a variety of knowledge brokering approaches, I think what we have learned through CDCAN is that many of our lessons really emphasize the importance of process brokering as a critical component of knowledge brokering. And so as a final takeaway, I'm going to leave you with this, that effective knowledge brokering combines research, processes, stakeholder engagement networks, and a bit of mutual capacity strengthening. Thank you very much, and I'm going to leave it.
Thank you, Charlotte. I think very good examples from Africa and how the knowledge brokering can help activities on ground or strengthen the activities on ground and maybe accelerate the activities or action plans on ground. So that's very much important, and thanks for sharing these examples. Maybe if we have more questions on this, we will come back to you on that. Thank you for taking your time and joining us in this session to share the African experiences. We have our next speaker, again, back to India, the state of Gujarat, where Mr. Lochan Chehra is in person in Glasgow. Mr. Chehra is an IAS officer of 2002 batch, is an Indian civil servant. and presently serving as the Secretary Housing and Nirmal Gujarat Urban Development Department. Mr. Chehra had a brief stint as the Managing Director of Gujarat Urban Development Limited, and he has also held various positions like Collector and District Magistrate of various districts, and also District Development Officer of Bharuch and Surat, and District Magistrate, Dahod, etc. Mr. Chehra is very much supportive of our program in the Gujarat state, which is as Swiss Agency for Development Cooperation is talking about. And Mr. Matthias has mentioned about the city of Rajkot, I think, which comes from the state of Gujarat in India. Thank you for joining us, sir, for this session from your busy schedule, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Respected panelists, ladies and gentlemen, in my presentation, I would like to share the adaptation and mitigation policies and measures which our cities and state government is taken in urban areas in Gujarat. Next slide, please. So some facts about Gujarat. Gujarat is one of the 29 states of India, which has around 6% of geographical area of India and around 5% of population, out of which around 43% population lives in urban areas. So from urban population wise, Gujarat is one of the top 3 states, urbanized state in the India. So we have lots of urban sector challenges before our cities. Next slide, please. Next, yeah. So we have 8 big municipal corporations, including 4 million plus cities and around 156 municipalities spread throughout the state of Gujarat. Next slide, please. Gujarat was one of the first states when Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi ji was Chief Minister of Gujarat to form a separate climate change department at state level in 2007. And Gujarat State Action Plan on Climate Change was made, including all the departments of state government, with focus on these 9 major sectors. I will be highlighting the policies and actions we have taken in the urban areas. Next, please. So Gujarat is a policy-driven state. In last 5 years, we have come up with policies like Gujarat Solar Policy, Wind Power Policy, Waste to Energy Policy in urban areas, and electric vehicle, both public transport and private electric vehicle promotion policies in the cities of Gujarat. Next, please. With the help of these policies, Gujarat is having around 15,000 megawatt of renewable energy as of now. And I would like to highlight the point number 1, where solar rooftop systems. Gujarat is generating 1,500 megawatt of energy from the cities of Gujarat. And in that way, Gujarat is first in the country in generating solar rooftop power from the cities. And for that, we have amended our general development control rules in cities to make it compulsory in all new constructions to have solar rooftop systems. Next, please. As far as solid waste management sector is concerned, with the help of funds from Swachh Bharat Abhiyan or Clean India Mission, Gujarat cities are able to reach 100% door-to-door collection. As of now, around 90% source segregation of wet and dry waste is happening. And out of that, around 88% waste is daily processed in the cities of Gujarat. I would like to highlight the work which have been done in legacy waste removal. There were legacy waste of around 173 lakh metric ton in the cities of Gujarat of last 40 to 50 years, which have been accumulated on the landfill site. Before 2 years, our cities have started bio-mining of the legacy waste. And as of now, around 80 lakh metric ton have been bio-mined and removed. And these legacy waste sites have been cleared. Next, please. And these are some of the photographs of legacy waste site clearings from Surat, Vadodara, Gandhinagar, and Jamnagar. Next slide, please. On these sites, on this reclaimed land, cities are planning urban forest through Miyawaki process. And These are the photographs of Ahmedabad, Surat, Vadodara, and Gandhinagar municipal corporations. Next, please. In the sector of wastewater management, Gujarat government has invested around 5,000 crore rupees of money in last 5 years to having underground drainage system as well as functional sewage treatment plant in all its 164 ULBs. And as of now, we have reached around 90% of capacities. Within a year, Gujarat will be the first state in India to have 100% sewerage coverage as well as 100% sewerage treatment plants. Not only that, Gujarat government has come up with policy of reuse of treated wastewater. And with that policy, municipal corporations of Surat, Ahmedabad, Vadodara, and Rajkot are selling the tertiary treated wastewater to the industrial associations on commercial rates. And in smaller municipalities where there's no industry, the treated wastewater is being supplied to the agriculture sector. Next, please. For promoting private electric vehicles, Gujarat government has come up with electric vehicle policy, and the target is to having 200,000 of private electric vehicles in the cities of Gujarat. And under the policy, government of Gujarat is providing subsidy for purchasing of EV vehicles. Next, please. As far as green transport and public transport is concerned, for this financial year, only Gujarat, 5 cities have planned 900 electric buses under FAME2 scheme of Government of India. And as of now, 241 electric buses are already functional in 5 cities of Gujarat. Next, please. Capacity project, which earlier speaker also shared, is being implemented in 3 cities of Ahmedabad, Rajkot, and Vadodara with the help of Swiss Agency of Development and Cooperation. And ICLEI South Asia has signed MOU for implementing these capacity projects in our 3 of our cities. City climate resident plan, action plan has been made for these 3 cities. Including the sectors of having captive solar PV projects for charging of electric buses, about having urban forest in the areas which reserved for green purpose, and moving towards the zero-based city. Finally, I would like to share a small 2-minute movie on how we are clearing the legacy waste from the landfill sites and creating urban forest there. Can we have movie, please?
We are committed to a clean Gujarat, committed to spreading the cleanliness message of Father of the Nation, Mahatma Gandhi, and determined to fulfill our Honorable Prime Minister's dream of Clean India. Gujarat has always set precedents for converting a challenge into an opportunity. There was a time when the city had many issues with legacy waste. But now, legacy waste processing has converted this waste into wealth. For this, Gujarat government has launched a statewide operation on a mission mode. The Swachh Bharat Mission, Urban Gujarat, is working uninterruptedly under the Department of Urban Development and Urban Housing to fulfill this goal. The enormous pile of approximate 173 lakh ton waste accumulated over decades had become a threat to people's health. For solving this issue of legacy waste, the department, with the consultation of experts, prepared a detailed stage-wise plan. And the 85.6 lakh ton legacy waste at the dumping sites was treated and disposed of, due to which hundreds of acres of open land became available and thousands of ton compost has been produced. Tree plantation through the Miyawaki process has been carried out at the land freed from the dumping sites. Beautiful gardens are being created in various cities. A noticeable improvement is seen in the air quality of these areas. The state's first ever ecological park has been created at the Bhopal dumping site. Adding new black soil layers helps grow new plants and enhance the region's ecology. The prominent work for the disposal of legacy waste in Gujarat is seen at Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation. By disposing of more than 39.20 lakh metric tons of waste so far, approximately 20 acres of land has been cleared of garbage. If we talk about Surat Municipal Corporation's Khajod disposal site, then approximately 25.19 lakh metric tons of legacy waste has been processed here. The work of capping closure has been completed in a scientific manner in a total area of 3,44,300 square meter. Disposal of about 40,000 tons of old waste at the municipal dumping site at Vyara has been started since 2016. About 1.51 hectares of land has been cleared by disposal of this legacy waste. A resource recovery station has been set up here to dispose of the waste. Today, garbage is now collected from households across the state. 89% of solid waste is scientifically treated and disposed of. Electricity is generated through the biogas of the waste. Several experiments on the extraction of petroleum products from plastic are being carried out. Such management of waste has been instrumental in creation of innumerable new job opportunities. Cleanliness is leading us towards a healthy and prosperous society.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nuzul Shahra, for sharing us Gujarat's initiatives towards the climate change, and also how the cities in your state are addressing the solid waste and wastewater, and also the new EV policy. I think that is also another game changer for the country of for our country, India. Thanks for sharing that information, and thank you for all the support to the capacities project, both at the state level as well as at the cities level, which is supported by the Swiss Agency for Development Corporation. We are happy to showcase some of the activities, not only in Rajkot, but also Ahmedabad and Vadodara as part of this capacities project. And I hope other cities will pick up these activities, these actions, and implement and address the climate change issues also. Thank you for all the support, and thanks for sharing that information. We have our next speaker, Mr. Hans-Peter Egler, is the project director from the South Pole, from Switzerland. South Pole is also a project partner in the capacities project. Mr. Hans-Peter Egler is the Director of Public Affairs with the South Pole and leads the city's practice. Hans-Peter is also currently co-heading the capacities project in India, which is supported by SDC, and focuses on climate action support in the 4 cities, Udaipur, Coimbatore, Siliguri, and Rajkot, and EIT climate project on the city finance lab, etc. Mr. Hans-Peter, the important point which is now discussed at the Glasgow summit is the financing of the climate actions. How can the cities get finances? How can the national governments can get finances? How we can bankability of the climate finance projects can be taken care of. So with this, I know that your organization, South Pole, is helping the cities not only in India but also all over the world on how they can get the climate finances. And I'm happy that you have taken out time and joined this session. And I request you to take the floor and show us what's happening on the climate finance front. Mr. Hans-Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar, for introducing me, and particularly for organizing this whole session with ICLEI. So it's a very opportune and very needed opportunity for everybody to really think about how all these wonderful ideas can be financed and who could be the partner for the implementation. So I would also like to say hello to all my respected partners and the other dear panelists on this honorable panel here. So let me start with a few remarks. I think as a former civil servant and participant also at the negotiations from Switzerland side, I think it would particularly be good for all the climate negotiators to really take into consideration pragmatic, feasible approaches and not venture into too ambitious ideas and concepts which are so difficult to implement. I think this is my wishful thinking so far, because I'm convinced that today we have so wonderful ideas, we have so wonderful solutions, and there is such a big enthusiasm among all the partners, be it the private sector, banks, companies, but also at government stage. And we have heard these wonderful examples from India, how ambitious and how interested these partners are to do their job and to join forces. I think without joining forces, it will be extremely difficult to really go to a next step. In addition to that, we have a situation with very low interest rates that shows the availability of money globally. So all good projects will find money. That's key. That's a key message one has to take on board. If a project is good and bankable, there will be money around. And bankability is a key element which we would like to achieve. With this introductory remarks, I would like to now focus on the presentation prepared. So how can we contribute in cooperation, particularly with the local stakeholders at all levels, private sector, NGOs, experts, and the government at the community, but also at the state and the national level, because these are all the important players we have to deal with. How can we now join forces to come up with new approaches? So let me go then to the next slide, please. So cities are actually key if we would like to contribute to climate change, because cities contribute a lot with their CO2 emissions, but all are also at the same time extremely vulnerable towards climate change. So therefore, cities play a crucial role for the whole improvement of the current situation. Only taking the fact that around 75% of global GHG emissions are attributed to cities, and 32, like the half of all existing infrastructure assets, will be under threat by climate change. And therefore, it is worthwhile to really think not only from environmental point of view, but also from value point of view, from asset holding point of view, what could be done. But the figures we are dealing with are enormous. Only in South Asian cities, and only until 2030, so it's about 9 to 10 years, the switch towards more resilient climate infrastructure is estimated as a $2.3 trillion. So it's figures we cannot imagine how many zeros we have before the dot. So I mean, it's huge figures, but we can handle this. There is enough money, and there is now the great will, and therefore joining forces is a key element. Next, please. We have heard before about Gujarat, so I would like to draw your attention on Rajkot, one of these of the cities in Gujarat. It's a so-called secondary city, also taking 1.4 million into inhabitants as population into consideration, would be in Europe a huge city. So it's a secondary city in Indian terms. It's a relatively wealthy region. And we see that there are the GHG emissions in these cities is a third is actually residential GHG emission. Another third is industry and construction. Then also likely a third is transport. So these are the three main emittents for GHG emissions. Then we have facilities in commercial and industrial building, and there is waste. So waste is not the most important emittent, but has other negative aspects. So you see on your right, on the right of the presentation, the costs associated in all these sectors to change them into more resilient and more climate friendly infrastructure. So also for a medium or secondary city, we are talking about 4 billion in the next year. So there is a huge effort behind us. Next, please, or before us, sorry. So how I said at the beginning, in the introductory, there is money around, but the money has to be put together. We have to join forces. And joining forces means that the public sector, usually financing infrastructure projects, designing infrastructure projects, and managing infrastructure projects, has to share this responsibility best with the private sector, having capacities in funding, managerial capacities, and also innovation capacities. And therefore, it's so important to really team up. It's really a wonderful example how useful it is for all these ventures to team up and to get the mutual experiences together so that synergies can be developed. So obviously cities can't pay for all these needed infrastructure investors. So we need to team up with the private sector because there is a lack of upfront public capital. There is, however, and that's the creativity and the know-how, a lack of pipeline for bankable and resilient infrastructure projects. The structuring of such projects demands managerial know-how, expertise in different fields. Unfortunately, this is not always available at city level, particularly not at secondary city level. The next area, which is of limited resources, capacities in cities, is there is a limited knowledge how to get access to climate finance. There is not so much knowledge available at the city level. Obviously clear so far, these civil servants were not confronted with the necessity, and therefore this has not been developed. And then what is always hindering a lot of designers and project promoters to venture into resilient infrastructure project is the fears of additional perceived costs. It's always thinking that an environmentally sound project must be more expensive than another, a traditionally established project, but this is not the case. And unquantified benefits of sustainable projects. This is also a very difficult area. There are a lot of benefits, but they are not quantified. So it's very difficult to really communicate this and to get a full understanding on costs, benefits, risks, and opportunities. So this has to be done to set the project right, to have the right setup and to find the right way of structuring a bankable project. Next, please. So just to quickly come back on the capacities program already mentioned by the representative of SDC from Swiss government and by the representative from Gujarat. So the idea of this, I would say, holistic project is to have an overall vision of what can be done in a city. This holistic climate action plans which have been developed allow a lot of insights, a lot of strengths and weaknesses and potentials that cities have when venturing into this new area. And then there is a whole screening of potential projects that will then lead to the structuring of so-called bankable project, meaning projects that follow more or less the traditional approach of an economic and financial assessment that a bank would do prior to invest, or another financial intermediary prior to invest. And then it's important to establish links to the private sector, to the financing institutions, so that they can participate, that they get attracted and will invest. Next, please. So we have here an interesting case study for innovative climate finance towards urban forests in Rajkot, as has been mentioned. So an urban forest can really contribute to the average of the temperature in this close to desert situated city of Rajkot, and also offer a potential for carbon sequestration. So we have actually two benefits and possible additional values when having urban forest in such, let's say, I would say, a very arid zones. And then what is the problem? You can't just start and plant trees and then say goodbye and think this is all done. It needs care. It needs actually a support for the whole management of such cultures. And it also needs a certain participation of the citizen. It's something that is in your city that you can benefit from, and which offers also leisure opportunities for the local population, and therefore there will become a certain, let's say, positive attitude towards these urban forests. And again, we are dealing with limited financial resources. So to overcome all these barriers, the municipality was willing to set up a tree fund and is now interested in getting advice how to structure it in a sustainable way. So the management of the tree fund as such, and the planting, the operations, will be handed over to a specific agency so that they can really take care of the plants and trees and do the whole management of the planting and the whole surveillance of these trees. Then there will be an open tree portal, so-called, where citizens can actively engage and start buying their own tree, get even an emotional relation to one or several trees. And on the other hand, it would allow also companies to contribute with their CSR money to the increased planting of trees. In the meantime, there will be a certified project established that can generate carbon credits, and these credits would then the selling of the income of the sales of these credits would then go back into the tree fund and then in a circular way support the existence over time of this tree fund. So it's a local carbon revenue generation with a voluntary market in the whole carbon credit area. The next, please. The next case study is in Ahmedabad. It's a local carbon fund for the Ahmedabad city. So what is the current problem this huge city has? It's actually the combating local air pollution, extreme weather, heat, and other impacts this city is suffering from climate change. And if they want to do this, it needs really a significant investment in a resilient infrastructure. So to kickstart this, the idea is to build upon the development of at least 3 bigger carbon projects to generate again carbon income from the sale of the carbon credits, and to over time to generate a fund. We have estimated this could be about 5 to 8 million that would support the extension of a local infrastructure, kind of project development for expansion of resilient infrastructure projects, so that we have all the additionality required from the climate convention, so that we are really on board, but it's a local solution, also promoted by the city that does the first step, but then paves the ground for participation of the private sector. So again, the urban forest is one of the pillars, focusing on the electric bus system and the waste management system that is planned. So we have here 3 pillars of substantive solutions already to the local climate situation in Ahmedabad. Thanks to those approaches, we will be able to generate additional money that can, in addition, contribute to the project development of expansion of climate resilient infrastructure projects to be built in the future. Next, and to conclude with, please.
Yeah, can you conclude?
Yes, here something extremely important for the current negotiation, Article 6, you know, country-to-country cooperation. It's about scaling up of e-mobility and battery storage in Thailand, a project between Switzerland and Thailand, currently on the final negotiations. What is the problem here is the high marginal capex investments for electronic vehicles, and that the problem also of not enough large fleets. Then the lack of charging infrastructure, that reduces users' confidence. I mean, when you only have a few chargers in the area, you won't venture into buying electric vehicles. Then so far it is all parceled around. There are only small assets around, and this makes it very complicated to find an interesting financing opportunity for the private sector. So therefore, we have to bundle projects so that they can easier get finance. So this pilot negotiated now between Thailand and the Swiss government focuses on the scaling of the finance for adoption of the electronic vehicles fleet in Thailand. And the idea is the de-risking of commercial investments into critical infrastructure and vehicles through results-based carbon payments for avoided use of fossil fuels, and thereby reducing marginal capex and stimulating the investments in infrastructure. So reduction of the capex, which is for the time being very high, and therefore also stimulating more infrastructure financing in the charging stations. So to overcome this problem of confidence in charging stations. In addition to get disaggregation of the distributed assets into a larger amount, a digital monitoring, reporting, and verification system will be applied so that one has a virtual integration of locally distributed assets, and the virtual integration becomes then, so to say, a bigger asset that is more interesting for the private sector to be financed. So with these three examples, I think there is some food for thought, for further development, for further cooperation among different key stakeholders, public sector, private sector, experts, and other know-how entities. So to really join forces to pave the way for our more sustainable and resilient future. Many thanks for your attendance.
Thank you, Hans-Peter, for sharing the examples. I think they are very good examples. I hope the cities all over the world see these examples and take them further for climate financing. And then the one point what you have said at the beginning, I think there is money available, but you need to bring the bankability of the projects, what the actions what you are proposing. I think that's very important message what you have brought in. And I hope the subnational governments as well as the city governments will take it forward, keeping that point in mind. I think the money is there, but bring a bankable projects to take it forward for climate action. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Our next speaker is Ms. Patricia. She's acting as a gender specialist in the CDK and Knowledge Accelerator project. Ms. Patricia is a climate change and water management specialist with extensive experience in adaptation, mitigation, water planning, and sustainable development. She has worked at the national leadership level and as an advisor to the various governmental ministries. Thank you, Patricia, for joining us this session. And Patricia is going to talk about gender inclusion and climate resilience, which is also very much needed at this time of our. Patricia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Emani. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the invitation. I hope you are doing well. I don't consider myself a gender expert, but I have a lot of passion for the subject, and I am in constant path of learning. And I'm also think that I am a result of this knowledge brokering, because it's not all the time easy to understand and to combine both topics like climate resilience and gender in the practice. And like, for example, in climate change assessment, but I'm here happy to share with you some of the CDKN's experience and the most new climate knowledge products. For my intervention, I'm going to split my presentation in 3 parts. One, a reminder why gender equity and equality is necessary in climate action. And second, I want to introduce a practical guide to setting targets and monitoring progress on gender and climate change. And with this second point, I want to, for the last part of the presentation, I want to quickly show some case studies that show climate action and gender and social inclusion. Can you go through the next slide, please? I want to start this slide saying that women are 51% of the population, but 70% of the poor, and 83% of the single parents, doing 66% of the work, producing 50% of the food, but earn just 11% of the pay and only 1% of the land. And we have been hearing in this COP about that we need to reduce the gap between the greenhouse emissions and the greenhouse emissions to be reduced to reach the goal of the Paris Agreement. But we need also to take into account this equality and gender gap. Otherwise, it's very difficult to achieve all this ambition in the climate action. Climate change has a greater impact of those sections of the populations in all countries, especially in the countries that are most vulnerable, who have the least capacity to respond to natural hazards such as droughts, landslides, floods, or hurricanes. And women commonly face higher risks and greater impacts from the consequences of climate change in situations of poverty, and the majority of the world's poor are women, as I say in the data. Women's has unequal participation in decision-making processes and labor markets, compound inequalities, and often prevent women from fully contributing to climate-related planning, policy making, and implementation. Yet, women can and do play a critical role in a response to climate change due to their local knowledge and the leadership in, for example, the sustainable resource management and leading sustainable practices at the household and the community level. Women are also very attentive to the details and know about the community. Their leadership is very important for climate actions. At the local level, women inclusion at the leadership level has led to improve outcomes of climate-related projects and policies. On the contrary, if policies or projects are implemented without women's meaningful participation, it can increase existing inequalities and decrease effectiveness. Climate change represents the most complex challenges of our time. It's true, we are facing this, but also it requires a concerted, proactive, and holistic response. So gender inequality may dramatically limit the resilience and adaptive capacity of women, families, and communities. It might also restrict options for climate change mitigation. So next slide, please. As I say in my second topic or point in this presentation, CDKN launched in this COP two incredible knowledge products about gender. One is related about the monitoring, evaluation, and learning system, and the other one is related with the climate finance. I'm going to talk mainly about the first one. And can you go to the next slide? This guideline, or this guide, was created with CDKN and several partners like SNB, Mercy Crops, CARE from Ecuador, CARE from Ecuador, and it was created because we heard a common refrain from project manager that we have to integrate gender into our climate project, but we don't know how exactly to do it. So this guide complements CDKN's training material, including PowerPoint packs and serious fun games on gender and social inclusion in climate projects. And the guide is not purely about the monitoring, evaluation, and learning system, because these don't stand alone. But we need to integrate into overall climate project design and planning processes that have ambition gender equality goals. So you cannot have a NEL system, inclusive NEL system, if you have done, if you have not declared at the beginning that you want to mainstream gender approach in your project. So it's why this guy include like some framing chapters that, for example, chapter 2 is about understanding diverse people's needs and capacity. Chapter 3 explain or guide you or give some examples into how to assess gender responsive solutions and project planning based on local people's knowledge, for example. And the chapter 4 is related more about the targets and indicators that the some of the projects have used to include gender in climate action. No? But the most important thing is that we are learning from experience. So this guide uses rich case studies examples to unpack how different organizations with different topics in different contexts and different regions have developed gender responsive objectives and targets appropriate to their sector and context, how they create relevant indicators and monitoring, evaluation, and learning system to track and understand the progress, and how they manage their project adaptively in response to emerging learning. So it's really a good example of how CDKN is brokering this information and the knowledge to apply in different contexts. So the next slide, please. We have 5 case studies. I'm going to be very quick there because I want to encourage you to visit this guide. As I said, CDKN with other partners create this guide. I want to acknowledge now the main author, Mairi Dupart, that is the technical advisor and gender lead in CDKN, and myself with these other partners, we extract the best practices of gender and climate change. So I'm going very quick through the 5 case studies, but as I said, I encourage you to visit our webpage and the guide to have more information. So we have Cambodia Horticulture Advising in Common Nutrition Program Change, and as a lot of countries, they are facing a lot of impacts in agriculture and water resources. And the main objective of the change program is or was to support the low income and smallholder farmers to increase their productivity and income to improve food security, nutrition, and climate resilience. This program does this by developing and strengthening horticulture value chain through market systems development approach in close collaboration with public and private sector actors. Change adopted a really an extraordinary gender transformative approach. Since its conception, the program has considered that both countering gender constraints and empowering women economically will transform unequal gender relationships and all levels, like in the household, in farmer groups, multi-stakeholder platforms. The approach considered that women are economically empowered when they meet the 5 key dimensions. That is, if they have economic advancement, increased income and return of labor, if they access to life changes and opportunities, for example, if women develop skills or increase their formal education, they receive information, and obviously with that, jobs opening. Access to assets, support functions, and services to advance economically, for example, most of the women in the rural areas are not owners of the land. So with this program, they try to change this. Also include women in the services, also to help them to make more influence in the decisions in the community and also in the municipalities, and try to consolidate this workload with other activities, sharing the responsibilities with their partners. The second case study that I want to talk is energizing development in Ndef in Tanzania. And the overall goals of this project or program was to tackle energy poverty, increase access to cleaner energy source for households, and increase the amount of sustainable income for women and men. And the approach to clean energy development seeks to be gender responsive in several ways. The program promotes women's equal participation in the program as cook stove producer and behavior change communication advocates, and also targets women as a buyer and user of improved cook stoves. So they build on existing local supply chains for improved cook stoves to support their production, distribution, and sales of clean and marketable cook stoves that meet the needs of rural households, the needs for energy. The other case study is in Malawi, is promoting a sustainable partnership for empower resilience, and the acronym is PROSPER, and PROSPER aim to build the resilience of households and communities, strengthen shock sensitive social protections, expand climate smart agriculture, reduce exposure to hazards and risks, achieve food and nutrition security, and diversify and improve income generation and economic opportunities. They sought for a reduction in extreme poverty and into recurrent cycle of hunger and humanitarian assistance in Malawi, through strengthening the resilience of over 150,000 low-income and vulnerable people to withstand current and future weather and climate-related shocks and stress, and to achieve their full economic potential. So they include women in all the activities, and some of the activities that they did was promoting climate smart agriculture and good agricultural practices, organizing events with private sector and district authorities to strengthen agricultural extension services, and supporting community-led solutions through a participatory planning process. The next case study that we have is not very related with climate change.
Patricia, if you can finish in a minute, maybe.
Okay, yes. So this is educating Nigerian girls in new enterprise. It's not very related with climate change per se directly, but I think it helps for the adaptive capacity of the Nigerian girls. This was made through to help these girls to enforce the current education and to insert girls who have been interrupted the opportunity to build their function literally and numerically. And the last case study is in Ecuador, is about enabling Indian communities to adapt to climate change. And the main objective of this project was to reduce the vulnerability to climate change by establishing a resilient model of family production. So the women are in Ecuador are the main the main lead in the family. So they implement ecosystem restoration techniques, and they improve the land use planning systems for creating like a communal cooperatives. And it was very important in Ecuador. So I will finish here. I think we are short of time. So thank you for your time, and I encourage you to visit our CDKN gender space and to visit the guideline. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia, for sharing the information on the gender inclusion. I think that is very much important. And I hope those case studies, what you have presented, will give indication or maybe a direction to other cities and subnational governments to how they can make use or make part of gender as part of their climate resilience activities. And when they plan at the national level or at the provincial level or at city level, how can they include gender also as part of their action plans? Thank you for your information, and I hope and I encourage, I think as Patricia said, please go through the website of CDKN. There are a lot of information is available, and the guidebook what we have brought in as part of the CDKN is very much useful for all of you on that. Thank you, Patricia, for giving this information. With this, I think I'm running late. We don't want to take up any question and answer session at this time, but I just want to thank all our speakers, starting from IDRC, Mr. Bruce and Mr. Matthias from SDC, and also both the government officials from Gujarat and Tamilnadu, and also Hans-Peter and Charlotte from South North, and Patricia for sharing that information. As a conclusion, I will say that cities and subnational governments are doing a lot of actions thanks to the support of various governments. And also, maybe I'll say the participation. I think the Principal Secretary from Tamil Nadu is talking about people's participation. This is most important. I think that's one takeaway from this particular session. And also that knowledge brokering. I think Bruce and Patricia and other CDKN activities, what they are showing is that knowledge is more important, and knowledge brokering is also very much important, because we need to know where the good actions are taking place, so that maybe others can follow, others can see what is happening there, and can also follow those actions and activities all over the world. Maybe I will put it that way. So the knowledge brokering is very much important. And other point came up is the action on ground. I think thanks to Mr. Sehra in Rajkot and other cities in Gujarat province in India, which they have shown like activities can happen on ground. And we need to obviously have a political will, and we need to have maybe the commitment. I think that is more important, which has come out on that. And Hans-Peter talked about climate finance, and I think I agree with him. Please look for bankable projects. Money is there, money is flowing. I know that there are a lot of discussions happening in COP26, but money is there, and if we can bring bankable projects, we can go ahead and implement on that. And the last but not least, on the gender inclusion is also very much important. And thanks to Patricia for the examples what she has shared on that. So with this, I just want to thank IDRC, SDC for supporting this particular event, and also all the speakers taking time from your busy schedules and sharing the best information available. And I hope this session will be useful for all the speakers, all the participants from all over the world, whoever is listening to us. I just want to thank each and everyone. If you have any questions, please write to us, and also please visit us. The two project websites have been given, cdkn.org and capacities.india.org. If you have any information, if you need, please get back to us through ICLEI websites, or write to us and we will share that information. Thank you all for sharing this information. Thank you all for participating in this session. I just want to conclude this session. Thank you. Thanks again for all of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.